This is Kristin.
And this is Steve, and you're listening to Cycling Together, a show about all things bikes, riding, and riding together.
Nicely done. Hey, this is show 20.
It's show 20.
I know we haven't been saying it, but I've been
Didn't you
counting.
tell me some sort of stat about podcasts that make it about past 10 shows? I mean, maybe it was just made up and you said it with authority, so I believed it. But
No, there is some stat out there. I can't remember it off the top of my head about like a large number of shows pod fade after the first like 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so the more you do, the more apt you are to continue to do.
I guess we're like doing it. We like doing it.
We do like doing it. And I think people enjoy listening. At least the crew that we had lunch with on Thursday seems to be
It was remarkable
enjoying
how many people,
it. It was weird.
Thank you all for listening. Yeah.
I know. I always say, like, you want people to listen, but in a weird way, you don't want to know they're listening. Or you say, I remember when I had Manic Mommies, you'd meet with a group of moms and they'd be telling everybody their kids' names, and they'd come to me and I'd be like, well, my son is named Anders, and they'd say, no kidding. And I was like, oh, that's right. You all listen to the show and know who I am. It's a weird space. Anywho, we are at the very end. The last 2 weeks have been incredibly busy.
Yeah, riding busy.
Yeah, good, happy things
riding together busy.
Yes, so what did we do? Let's see. Right after we recorded the last show, I took the day off and helped the Pan Mass Challenge with a safety video. So that was riding, but I rode 8 miles in half-mile increments. Back and forth.
Yeah, back and forth in a neighborhood and a private house, and
which was really interesting because you would debate things like, how do you signal a left turn now or a right turn, not a left turn? How do you signal a right? Is it this way or is it this way? You would just debate some funny things about what people believe the rules of the road to be.
Right.
And then last Saturday you closed. And we went out to Western Mass to help our friends Meg and Johnny at the Bikes Fight Cancer charity ride.
Yeah. And that was, here we are. We're on the, I guess, second day of summer.
Yes.
And it's 90, and it's supposed to be 100 in a couple days.
Yes.
And last weekend, it was rainy and 58 degrees.
Yes.
Just for this one day, for this one event.
Perfectly timed,
right? But I think everybody had a great time. I dressed perfectly, and so when you have just the right, like, it was 58 is not cold enough to be cold, but it's easy to also dress fairly well, right? So I just had a great day on the bike.
Right. And it's a great event. You said a great route. And
great route, great organization, great venue, great signage, great people. I just like everything about that event. Cannot recommend enough. It was just an amazing event.
It was a fun day. I helped MC for the first time. That was my first time on the mic. It's a very strange experience, trying to figure out what you should be saying to a bunch of riders based on the audience, because there were a couple of different groups that went out. And then I got to play all my music.
Nice.
Because I got to play it, so I hooked it into my Spotify workout mix, to which their daughter, who is a teenager, came up afterwards and said, whose playlist is that? I must have it. And I thought, that's fine. Thank you. I'm still relevant. I'm still cool. Sophie came. She helped.
Yep.
We thought about doing the 25-mile ride, but I will admit I'm good with cold and dry and wet and warm, but cold and wet, not my favorite thing. And by the time I was done emceeing, if I had gotten back to the van, I didn't plan that right.
Yes.
It would have been almost over.
Yep.
You did the 50.
Right.
But you were also a volunteer, so you had a pack full of
I carried a lot
tubes.
of extra stuff, and so if I saw anybody stopped, I would stop and help. And so this brings up an interesting point. And a lot of cyclists will know this. You pass a group of people on the side of the road with maybe, let's say, a flat. But it's not just one person. Let's say it's 2 or 3, maybe even 4. And you do that. You good? Yeah, we're good. And you keep on going. And so what I learned is they're not good.
Oh, okay. Most are not.
No, and I mean, I automatically stopped for these people because I was out there to help.
Yes. And I heard you were like Superman. You would fly
these people
in,
would have said
grab
we're fine had I just passed by because they thought they were fine.
Right.
And
they probably would have gotten it done, but you're just very speedy with changing tires.
Yes, in one case got it done, in another case they were in trouble. No.
Okay.
Yeah. And they didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the ride. Well, we'll get to it, but we did the ride on Thursday, and we rode by a group of people, and one of our friends was like, "We're fine, Steve. No problem. We're good." And you're like, "Good."
Wait, that was Larry, though,
yes,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
There were like 6 of them, though.
I know, exactly.
And they were experienced people. We were like, "You got the stuff."
He was like, "Okay, we're fine, Steve, the bike guy. It's all good." Okay, so that was Saturday.
Yeah.
Then Sunday, we had the last Dover Demons. Well, it was the last NEYC race of the season, which had a coaches race.
Yeah.
Which was really hilarious, in part because it was a Le Mans start, not Le Mans. That's another guy. So Le Mans start, but they started us by doing rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, so you just basically turned to the person next to you, did rock, paper, scissors. If you won, you ran to your bike, and then the loser of that had to turn to the next person and do rock, paper, scissors until they won to go get their bike. Yeah. There were at least 100 people. And it was from the start line immediately into single track.
Oh, yeah.
So we did, and a single track with a massive log rollover, we're going to call it.
Well, thank goodness for that, because that's where it finally started to spread the group a little bit. And you had coaches who clearly had raced in the past, and then you had, I know at least a couple of dads who their kids were like, "Come on, Dad, you got to do it." And so they were suddenly standing in the middle, and they were champs.
Yep.
It was a short track little race. It was just comedy.
Yeah, they shortened the whole course for us.
Yeah, it's good for the kids to see. They had fun heckling and cheering, and so that was awesome. Just so much good to say about the coaching. And again, I think there's a whole show in that. Then this past Thursday, we rode our bikes to Provincetown from Plymouth.
Yep. So that's 84 miles.
Yep.
And it was a hot day, but when you're riding out on the Cape Cod, it's the breeze and everything keeps you much cooler.
Yes. Unfortunately, it started overcast. So
yeah,
it was
and it started overcast.
About half of it. The where it would have been the hottest, it was because we were inland, and then as we hit the Cape, it cleared.
Yeah, when we left Plymouth, it was foggy actually.
Right. And then yesterday we worked with the local library and the police to host a bike safety event for little kids at the library. And scene. Today was the first day I've been just at home while you were at the shop, and it was glorious. But all those events are what are inspiring today's show.
Yes, and so today's show is about underrated bike skills.
Right. Underrated, but incredibly important bike skills. And we're really focusing, I'm going to say, on road and gravel cycling with these. Yep. There are some that translate to all of them, but I think this is more a road. We did a lot of group rides in the last week, and we obviously with the PMC safety video and
Bikes Fight
the
Cancer.
Bike Fight Cancer, and then the P2P. Like we were in lots of groups, and it really made us realize some of those skills. So let's dive right in.
Okay.
Skill number 1.
Yes.
The ability to take your hands off the handlebars.
Yeah.
I went years ago. I don't know if you remember this. I went into Worcester. There was a bike shop in there that was doing a women's ride. So I went into Worcester to meet some friends. And as we started, before we started, we talked about the importance of signaling and pointing to things in the road. And one of the women said, I don't do that. And when asked why, she said, because I do not take my hands off the handlebars.
Yes.
And I said, well, how do you, I don't know if I said it or somebody was like, well, how do you eat and drink? And she said, I stop.
Yep.
So
this
discuss.
Discuss. This is actually a really important one for a lot of reasons. And I guess I hadn't, until you just said it, realized, oh, you won't point. You won't do the normal group ride safety things, pointing out the big hole, pointing out the sand at the side of the road by sort of shaking your
dead animal.
shaking your open fingers on the side. The pat on the back of your butt when there's something along the side of the road, like a parked car. People are calling things out as well. But when you're in that pack and you really can't see in front of you, you can't see the things very far in front of you because you have somebody who's 4 feet in front, right? Those hand signals are crucial.
They are crucial, but even if you're not talking about group rides, you're just riding by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when you and I started road riding more, or I started riding with you more, and I would be behind you, and you would stand, basically sit up on your saddle, no hands.
Mm-hmm.
You would take off your gloves, put them away. You would stretch. Your comfort on the bike was so obvious, and I did not have that comfort on the bike. I was good with one hand, but it took me a while to get to the 2 hands. But even one hand, group rides aside, it lets you drink your fluids.
Well, yeah, we're talking about hand signals there. So now,
but I'm saying that
moving on to the other skills that it lets you do. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was doing.
You were moving on.
I was moving on to the other skills, which is not always, I guess the point is, it's not always about the group ride. We're going to talk about a lot of skills that impact group rides, but the ability to take your hands off the handlebars are good for all riders, for all situations. You can eat. You can adjust.
You can pull stuff out of the back of your pocket.
Yes.
You can remove clothing. Now, that's starting to creep up in the advancements.
Level.
Yeah, skill level. Yep. The stretching, it can be super beneficial. And you're right. To me, riding completely no-handed, sitting straight up in the saddle, even stretching my back by leaning backwards in the saddle, it almost feels like I'm walking. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to fall, just as I'm not going to fall walking down the sidewalk.
Right. But it took some time to get there, and I always feel like I'm at my most comfortable with a bike when I can take both hands off the handlebars. I know the bike and I are well balanced.
Mm-hmm.
I have found my right balance on the bike. So new bike, I can't always do it right away because I haven't found my balance on the bike. Just not as natural a cyclist as you are.
The ability to take your hands completely off a bike has a lot to do with what's called the trail.
Mm-hmm.
And the trail of a bike is a geometry setup, basically, and it's a little bit of a complex, but it has to do with the axis of the steer through down to where the axle of the wheel is, and the difference between where those intersect and the difference between them.
Yep.
And so a bike with a longer trail is going to be more stable.
Oh.
It's going to tend to want to the wheel's going to want to go straight more easy. All right, and a bike with a shorter trail is going to be, we'll just call it twitchier in a way. So the slightest amount of body movement that will start to induce a steer will continue to induce the steer, whereas that longer trail bike will not want to fall into that steering axis path. Yep.
It just feels fun too, being able to have no hand, look, Ma, no hands. But I have reached the point where I can take things off, put them on, take my arm warmers off.
Yeah.
Put them away, keep riding. So it's a really good skill from safety, comfort, food.
Yep, and it just takes some work. It takes working on, and I suppose that first time you take both hands off your bars, boy, that is a little bit of a leap of faith, isn't it?
It's just like when you were a kid, you start with one and I would say, At minimum,
one.
You have to be able to take off one.
At minimum, yes.
You should definitely practice, and you should practice either one.
Yes.
Because sometimes you just want to be able to, you should practice.
Yeah, well, you can't get things out of the left rear jersey pocket with your right hand.
Oh, that's true.
Right? So, yeah, you need to be able to do both.
Exactly. What's next?
What's next? I put down walking your bike.
Walking
All
your
right.
bike.
So we had to walk. All right. So we had to walk our bikes across the Sagamore Bridge.
Yes.
And this
you
is
did.
just maybe you have to walk your bike across the parking lot.
Yep.
Whatever. You're just walking with your bike.
across a narrow bridge, maybe that has you and your bike can't fit side by side.
In general, to walk your bike, you are either holding it. So you're walking and your bike's on your side.
Yep.
It doesn't matter which side, and you're walking it by holding the stem. So you're sort of grasping the center stem. So
Okay.
you can do two things. You can steer it, and you're also it stays more stable by walking it like that.
Right.
Okay. Then the a little bit more advanced skill is by walking it by holding the top of the saddle. So this is where on those narrow bridges you're almost pushing your bike and you're just walking to the side, to the rear of that tire, of that back
That's
tire.
cool.
So when you're pushing the bike by the saddle, you can also, again, trail comes into a factor on how easy it is to do this, but you can steer the bike by the certain way you just sort of sway back and forth. And there's certain times when it makes it easier to push the bike by the saddle.
Okay.
I saw a couple people doing sort of the two-hand push by holding their bars. So they've got the bike along their side, and they're grabbing the handlebars with both their hands, and it's this very awkward walking motion to try to push and walk with your bike that way.
Right, because you're kind of twisted.
Yes,
to
your
the
torso's
bike.
now twisted. You actually can't control the bike, funny enough, as easily that way. It's just an awkward situation.
Yep.
So, yeah. Oh, and I said it doesn't matter which side the bike's on, but it sort of does. You usually want your bike on the right. And the reason is because if you have your bike on the left, now you're on the drivetrain side, and depending on the cleanliness of your chain, this is where you could end up with the old chainring tattoo on your calf.
You're on the dirty side.
Yeah, where you if you touch the chainring,
Right.
you could end up with that mark on your calf.
And then there's the third way, which is to pop it up onto its
Yes.
rear
Hey,
wheel.
good point. Yeah. Mhm.
That's what I tend to do.
Yep.
Getting it in and out of the bike shop, that's one of the easiest ways to get it, like through a door.
Through a door. And that bridge, as you mentioned.
That narrow bridge,
Mhm.
yes, you could push it ahead of you. That would work. But the easier way is you pop it up. So you are holding it with both handlebars,
hands.
and you're
Yep.
pushing it on its back wheel.
Yeah,
in
the
front
bike
of
is
you.
vertical up in the air.
And
Mhm.
again, it just looks cool. You just look like someone who's very capable. If you can, it's the action. It's not so much once it's going, it's fine. It's that being able
That
to
pop up.
Mm-hmm. Pop it in a way. And sometimes I'll take my knee and I'll push the saddle with my knee as it comes up, especially my mountain bike, which is a little heavier than, say, my road bike.
Yep.
And that gives you some stability as it pops up.
Yeah, and
that
this
way
is
you can
usually
walk it.
easier if you grab it by the hoods like you'd be
Yes.
riding and just lift that front wheel up as you're swinging the rear wheel underneath it while it's still on the ground, and it rolls underneath, and then boom, it's just sort of
These
this
are one of those-
swift motion, and it goes up into the air.
These are one of those things that, like, our kids would see us do, and you could see them go, oh, that's cooler. Like, it's kind of like, I remember once we were mountain biking with the kids, and you had stopped, and instead of putting your feet down, you just leaned up you held onto a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched our daughter watch that and attempt to do it, because it clearly to her was just cooler.
So is that an underrated skill?
I do think that's an underrated skill that sometimes, if you're just, I mean, that's really more maybe mountain bike specific, that, if you're just waiting for a second, you could do it elsewhere too. But
I
there's not
do
a
it
lot of
often on the
places.
mountain bike where we're in a group and the group stops to recollect everybody, and I just grab onto a tree, still clipped
God
in,
forbid
just
I
sort of just sit right, and just sort of still sitting on the saddle then, and
Yeah.
then you can start off from basically that standstill.
Right.
But I have done that many times with roadside signs on the side at a stoplight.
stoplight?
Yep, yep, where there just happens to be the perfect sign sitting there.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that brings us to the next one. We did actually ask the members of the STBG Cycling Team for some of their recommendations, and one from Doug was, he said, the power start. Right. So so many new riders start like Fred Flintstone with a shuffling start. And then I would add to that the slow rolling start. And when he first said this to us, I don't know that you totally understood.
No,
what
until
he
I started
meant.
to pay attention to it at P2P.
Right.
I was like, oh, people
And
are doing that.
So you're at a light and the light changes. One person said, I think the bike commuters are really good at the start because they're used to like, green is go. I have to go. And so they would just go. And then you'd be behind a rider who wasn't quite ready. And so, yeah, it would be this like shuffling start and a little tippy. So I kept calling it start with intention. Get a good, powerful start going and then worry about clipping in.
Yeah,
I think that was part of it.
With your crank up in the ready position, you're 1 foot on it, and you're ready to give it's that first strong push, so that the bike really starts accelerating really fast, because then you're instantly on the other pedal, and then just cranking it up.
Well, and you're more inclined to go straight.
You are.
If you start a little slow,
the bike
which
can
is
wobble.
Going to get to the bike can wobble, so it needs that inertia. It needs that power to go, and that can be really hard in a group ride setting because you're kind of shuffle start, and so that's where I would say the being able to, I don't want to call it track stand, but be able to slowly, how slow can you pedal on your start with intention, but then also be slow is kind of a weird thing.
I guess that's a version of the start, because you're absolutely right. In a group ride, say Raid Rockingham, where we started in the en masse there.
Yes.
And yeah, I would actually, push off very slowly, clip in, but I am now
intention.
Barely moving. And in some cases, you're almost track standing. You're right, waiting for that group to start going so on there, and there you go.
Started with intention. So, but then you also had to stay slow, so you didn't have to keep putting your foot down or tip over on people. That is where you see a lot of tipping over on people, I think, is on the start, or if you're not intentional with your stopping either. You get to a thing, are we stopping? Are we not stopping?
Yep.
And then maybe they can't unclip and fall on people. So that was one. That also did make me think of one that it took me a long time, and I still struggle with it, is the ability to turn your head without your bike going in that direction.
Okay, so that is definitely
really hard one.
An underrated or little thought of bike skill.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to be able to look behind you, give that glance back to see whether it's a car or another rider or whatever you're looking back for, without, while you're looking back, the bike going whoop into the, swerving into the side.
Well, and that's the thing. Does it go where your head goes, or sometimes
it's usually, I believe it's the opposite of the way your head's turning. So normally you're turning your head to the left because you're on the right side of the road.
Yep.
So I suppose it's reverse in England. And so you're looking back over your shoulder to the left, so then you tend to veer right.
Which was perfectly illustrated. I won't say which ride it was illustrated at, but it was perfectly illustrated at the end of one ride where one of the riders came in, they looked left, they swerved right, and they basically landed on another rider, and then got mad at the rider for getting in their way.
Right.
And you're like, no, that was you. And I get it, because it took me a long time to be able to maintain, and I still don't always do it. Sometimes even turn left, and sometimes you find yourself turning into that direction too. Like it's all about staying straight. You want to stay as straight as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes. Especially in group rides, when you're in a group.
Yeah.
Predictability. Predictability is what it's all about, meaning maintaining the straightest line you can. No unpredictable swerving and so forth.
So Rob shared, here's what I have. How to handle someone in front of you surging sideways and making contact with your front wheel. How to handle someone locking handlebars with you, shoulder to shoulder touching. Honestly, over the years, I've used almost every cyclocross racing skill at road events due to inexperienced riders suddenly changing their lines without clearing around themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I accidentally did this on Thursday.
Really?
The shoulder-to-shoulder touching I was telling you.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Chris and I were riding side by side. We're just chatting. And then suddenly, I still don't know what happened. My bike it's like it's like I started to fall and I started to correct, but he was right there. Fortunately, he is very strong person. So we were leaning on each other, like shoulder to shoulder. I have never ridden that close to you, shoulder to shoulder. And then we managed to get ourselves back up and keep on going, which we were both very impressed that we didn't end up in a tumble of bikes and body parts. But that ability to stay straight and then also to try to be nimble when people around you are not being is, that's a skill to have. And it can happen. I mean, I would call myself an experienced rider. I was mortified. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened.
What's this one from Jeff here?
So Jeff was talking about and I think this goes into the straight thing, right? Like the staying straight, staying on target, which is to keep your eyes up and look as far ahead of you as possible. In mountain biking, we talk about this a lot, about the idea that you want to look through things, right? You don't necessarily want to look at the tree, otherwise you will hit the tree. But we don't talk about this much in road riding, the idea that you want to keep your eyes up. You want to look as far ahead of you as possible. Look to the horizon. That helps with speed management. That helps with directional. So, and it made me think about when I used to take spin class, and you could always tell the difference between someone who did spin exclusively and someone who rode a bike outside. And because the spinners always had their head down, and the instructor was always yelling, "Get your head up, everybody, eyes forward." But if you had a cyclist in the class, like me, when I rode with you, our heads were up, because that was a very strange, unless you were just so in the pain cave and you know where you're going, like I was at the end of P2P on Thursday. You got a great picture of me. I was just behind you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on
straightaway, and my head was just down because I was like, Steve will tell me.
Yeah, I've been on some very long climbs where you're in the pain cave, and you're going for 5 miles an hour, and you put the head down, and you just sort of like, the end will come, and I don't need it.
I don't know when it'll come, but it will come. Yeah, so that was one of the things that he mentioned. Then there's turning. So Rob was saying that he had a case at a gravel ride where a rider near him went down because they kept their inside pedal down on a turn and caught it on the road. And Jeff had also mentioned the importance of knowing how to keep your pedal up on the inside of a sharp turn. So turns.
So I see what you're saying about turns.
Pedal position and turns.
Pedal position and turns is a very, very important skill. Not only just because you don't want to clip the pedal, but it also, when you're keeping that outside pedal down and weighted, it can help you carve through the turn and be more stable through the turn.
Right. That's me carving through turns. That made me think there were a couple of skills I thought of that I think of more as mountain bike skills that translate to road and gravel. Because I do always say that every bike I ride helps with the other riding, right? Like I was doing road, then I got into cyclocross. My cyclocross skills helped me on the road, helped me with mountain biking, like they all. So for me, number one is there are a lot of road riders that are just scared to death of anything that resembles dirt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Which around here is a problem because our
Absolutely.
roads have a lot of areas that resemble dirt and gravel.
This is where I suppose mountain biking and gravel riding and cyclocross, those skills translating over to road, when you have that skill riding off road, you understand that sometimes the little bit loss of traction, the little bit of slide, the little bit, all of that, you can just sort of let the bike do its thing and sort of it doesn't even bother you. And I suppose that slight sketchy feeling of a road bike on dirt where there's going to be this little bit of almost like a loose connection between you and the surface, that I think that's what throws people off.
Yeah. And I think as I've become more of a mountain biker, say when I am I mean, when we rode on Thursday, so those are all roads or rail trails, all paved. But then you would have, say, a sketchy surface coming up. I would immediately stand up in my pedals and get myself off of my saddle.
Yes.
And then I might shift my weight back a little bit to unweight my front wheel so that I will get through it smoothly.
Right.
Those are skills that I bring from mountain biking.
off-road to road.
Yeah, so that ability to just move around on your bicycle. That not to feel like you are attached to the saddle, you're attached to the...
Yeah.
I think that looseness is a kind of
and
underrated skill set.
Bunny hopping a bad pothole, I suppose, too, right?
Right. Or even level pedals, right? You're going down a long descent.
Yes.
And
level pedals. Yep.
In mountain biking, we put our pedals level. And why do we do that?
Well, to keep them from hitting things.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And stability.
There it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Stability and to keep them from hitting things.
Right. So that's another thing that just happened. When I go downhill, I hit into level pedals.
Right.
Right. And again, I might shift my weight back a little bit in my saddle just to say my front wheel does hit something.
Yeah, there's that, and this happens occasionally where you're going quite fast on pavement, and then the pavement ends, and you hit dirt. And that transition zone at high speed, knowing you're going from, that is where your level pedals, your off the saddle, weight back, right, and then my front wheel can pretty much hit anything, and it's just going to go over it, right? So because as that gravel and that stuff coming up, you don't maybe know how chunky the gravel, the dirt's going to be, and so forth. You don't know how there's going to be holes and so forth. So that kind of skill there.
I remember was there a Tour de France years ago where Lance Armstrong went flying off the side of a road that was curving?
Yes.
And he went
straight across
the grass. Back onto the road, and they all were like, whoa, that was crazy. He didn't crash out on the grass because he had some quote unquote mountain bike skills. They thought that was, I remember people like, it's a good thing he had those skills.
Scene. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I just remember that being quite the, did you see that he didn't? But that's the kind of thing that can happen too. You can suddenly end up on grass because of a big group.
Yeah, or you could fall off the side of the road, we'll call it.
That's true.
Especially
if somebody shoulders you. Sorry, Chris.
And depending on your road conditions, right, it can be almost a sharp, abrupt cutoff from the asphalt to sand or dirt or whatever, and you have to be able to know not to immediately try to get back on the asphalt because your tire is going to rub along that edge, right? And you can that can actually cause you to crash.
Yep.
So it's negotiating that sketchiness and knowing how to get back on there.
And not oversteering. Right, you were saying with the dirt, or say you go into some sand, it could be it's kind of like when you hit ice.
Yeah, not oversteering.
When you hit ice, you kind of you know, as a skier, we know if you hit ice, just try to go over it and then turn. It's kind of the same with gravelly bits or grass or sand. I'm just gonna go straight until I can really get some traction.
Your steering motions are slower and gentler.
Right.
The looser the surface is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about riding in groups, because that was a lot of what we did. And to the point that we were just talking about, that's where some of the accidents can happen. First of all, can I start paying people to say on your left for the... I don't understand why people on big group rides have any hesitancy about telling other riders that you're there. So
you think
you're
it's a big
riding. I think this is just it's my pet peeve. I'm gonna use my platform. Nothing drives me more crazy than you're in a big group, right? You are in a line on the right, and then suddenly, like stealthy magic, shoo, 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 all these riders come up on your left. Now, I know we're all in a group ride, so I think they're thinking, well, you should just expect I'm going to be there. But I don't. But every time I passed somebody, again, that is on our ride, and I said on your left, they always said thank you.
Yeah.
They always said thank you. And no offense, it's always big, fast groups that are going to, they're coming up fast.
So you're talking about
line.
all of the riders in this particular ride, obviously in different groups and so forth, what was happening. Because I can also move that over to when we were on the rec path section.
Yes, you got yelled at.
I did. Yeah, and I was at fault. So, yes, I passed 4 elderly people on their e-bikes, and I did not, well, we went down this little turn under a tunnel, and then as we were just coming up. So this was a little slower speed.
Yes.
And I didn't say on your left.
Yes.
And
she let you have it.
She let me have it.
And the only annoying thing about that is I always say on your left. So now it looks like I'm saying on your left because she yelled at you, and it's not. It's because I always say it.
Yeah, you do.
She did say thank you. She said like that or something like that. So yes.
And even the walkers in many cases, many of them said thank you.
Always.
Because it's helpful for them to know that I was just about to be passing on their left.
Yeah, but we do it.
And it can get repetitive. On a rec path, it can get really repetitive.
And I don't care.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
I have now come to appreciate that more. Yes.
But I'm not. So yes, absolutely. We need to be saying on your left there. But I'm talking about there were 400 riders going out, right? Yeah. Say there's 10 of us riding.
Yep.
Of these 400, we are single file. Or maybe we're not. Maybe we're 2 abreast. And then suddenly, up come on my left are 10 or 15 more riders.
Yeah.
They're coming fast.
Yep.
They tend to be in a pace line.
Yep.
They never tell you they're there. Now, it's not like I was going to pop out in front of them.
Right.
I would look back. But on the other hand, they're behind me. It's their responsibility for them to know. I remember the first PMC I did.
Yeah, but before the first person comes up behind you, you could have, for some reason, decided to pop out. And if it's a pace line where everybody's tight, to me, the lead rider's the one who says on your left. You don't. Not every single person in the line has to say it.
Not everyone has to say it.
Right.
But I was my first PMC. I was on the Cape Cod Rail Trail, which is part of it, and I must have been separated from everybody. I was by myself, and someone was handing out popsicles. So I swerved to the right to get my popsicle, and of course I then started to move back, and this team started yelling at me as they pace lined past me. Okay, first of all, you're on the rail trail. You shouldn't be pace lining. And second of all, you should tell me you're there. So I don't know if this is skill. I don't know if this is etiquette. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to, if I had a nickel for every time
you're worked up about the on your left.
Get mad. I really get mad. I've started now saying things like, there's a rider passing you on your left. Or, gosh, I'd pay for it on your left.
Well, just the on your left will prevent collisions. It just will.
And we even do it. The funny thing is we do it in mountain bike racing. When we were doing the coaches race, people would say, I'm coming up on your left. And that was so that I could make a little room on the right and I wouldn't get surprised by them. So
in a mountain bike race, if I'm caught behind somebody on single track and I'm just waiting for my moment and I see that, and it could be left or right.
Yes.
I will then absolutely tell a rider passing on your left because I want them to know, can you just hug a little bit more right as I go. Yep.
There was a really funny moment during the coaches race where I was behind somebody and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to come by on your left. And they said, there's really no point. It was too tight. And I was like, there's always a point. And I flew by this person and hit the bridge. It was awesome.
Skills. I don't know if this is an underrated bike skill. This is just we're going over into etiquette now.
Underrated bike knowledge. But I think it's important because we're talking about group rides, and I think it's important, and I need to get it off.
You need to get it off your chest. Okay, this is more etiquette, but go for it.
When you are in a big group, and someone behind you yells, "Car back," what are you supposed to do?
Work your way as far to the right as you can,
so that you're
facilitating the cars passing faster and easier, so that you can get back to riding a couple abreast if you want to and chit-chatting again.
At one point, I said car back so many times, and the person behind me said, I don't think they know what that means.
There are certain riders who just, you're absolutely right. You know they hear you. They know they just don't seem to care. And it's weird.
Yeah. It's
it's
almost
we're
like
also all drivers. So if you're if
Right.
you're in that position and you come up across you know and they you see the cyclist moving over and you're like, oh great, okay, I can safely actually, and here's a
Right.
person place, I can safely pass them now, and boom, you're gone. You want that in both sides.
Yes.
If you're the driver, if you're the cyclist,
Yes.
it just makes everything smoother instead of hanging out,
better.
basically hugging the center yellow line.
right.
Right? I mean, which is what a lot of these guys are doing, is just, or guys and gals, hugging the center line. And car back,
Right.
and they're just sitting there chit-chatting.
Right.
Yep.
They're just profoundly not moving over.
Yeah. And this gets worse and worse the bigger the group ride, because there is a mob mentality, maybe, that it's sort of like, yeah, we're a big group of riders, too bad for that car.
I say it's more brains, less intelligence.
Mm.
And then if it's a charity ride, forget about it.
Yeah.
Because it's more brains, less intelligence, and the exuberance of we're doing something great this weekend. And we are doing something great. Like, we're here for a purpose. But that's when we get cars getting swarmed at lights, which also drives me a little bananas.
Yeah, as you're coming up to a light or whatever, don't and everybody's slowing.
Yes.
Don't go on the left side of the cars. Stay along the right side.
Yeah, and
you're right, because you're right. They swarm the cars on both sides.
Yes, they swarm it on both sides, which makes them scared and sad, and I don't like that. And the whole idea, to go back to one of Jeff's tips, which was to keep your eyes up, is so that you can see what the car is attempting to do. We were going over a highway or under a highway. We were going across a highway, and so there were on-ramps and off-ramps. And this poor car is trying to get 2 lanes over to the on-ramp so that they can get. And it was pretty good. There was a gap in front of me, and so I'm just trying to get everyone to slow down. And we had one rider come fly up to the right, and he nearly got... It took him a little too long to realize I was saying, stop, wait, let the car go.
Yes.
But the car had to go. Otherwise, the car was going to have to stop in the middle of the road to get onto they were going to pass the off-ramp. Yep. So it is in our best interest to be as polite as possible.
Absolutely.
And car back is...
Because you do not... We have no need to create more pissed off motorists.
Yes.
At cyclists.
One rule I always like that you taught me, and I'm definitely in the minority here, is if you say a bunch of cars have passed you on the road, I don't road ride that much anymore, pass you on the road, you approach a stoplight, stay in your, if you're only like 1 or 2 cars back, stay in your position.
Yes.
So that the cars don't have to keep passing you, right?
Yep.
I will say you are in the minority with that
I
rule.
am. I absolutely am.
When we do a group ride, I will stop like 2 cars back, and everybody's just continuing up directly to the
lead
light.
car, to the front of the light. Yep.
And we're only 2 back. I'm not saying stay 10 back, 15 back.
Right.
I'm just saying if you approached it and you were right there.
If I had 3 or 4 cars pass me on the road.
Yes.
And then they all started, and the light turns red, and then they all start slowing down. I am going to, as I get to those cars and the light's still red, I'm just going to stay on the side of the road, but basically not squeak myself between all 4 of those cars and the edge of the road up to the front. Right. I'm just gonna hang out behind that 4th car,
right?
Because in 10 seconds at most, the light turns green. They're off. I'm off. They don't have to pass me again.
Exactly.
And I am in the minority with that.
You are.
I agree.
It's a great rule. Okay, we're going to take a quick break because I think our camera just stopped.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. I think I've gotten it all off my chest. This brings up one skill we didn't talk about yet, which is the pace line.
Ah, the pace line.
Pace line or drafting.
Yes.
Right. So what do we mean when we say what do we mean when we say drafting?
Drafting.
Yeah,
So
so start with
drafting.
drafting.
Drafting is riding behind another cyclist close enough that you're getting a benefit from being out of the wind.
Yes.
So you're getting an aerodynamic advantage by being behind them.
Yes.
And how close is that? When you get good at it and comfortable at it, inches away from their wheel. Now, the two wheels are not always going to be exactly in line. You're going to be they will often they're going to be exactly in line, but there's going to be some fluttering left and right of each other. But I can mean inches.
When
single digit inches.
I think several years ago I wrote a blog post about how drafting was the ultimate test of love and trust between the two of us because let's be real, I generally draft off you. It's a great way for you to help me when I'm like on Thursday when I'm feeling fatigued, and it really makes a difference. I mean, there can be times when I am in your slipstream where you're pedaling and I'm not even pedaling, because if I pedaled, I'd hit you. Like it's that efficient. But I cannot see anything but your tushy. Like I can't see if there's something in the road. I can't see what direction we're going. I am that close to you. So it really is this like ultimate. But even there's benefit. You don't have to be that close for there still to be some benefit.
You don't. No. The benefit can go quite far back.
Yes.
So. And there's a lot of nuance to the skill of this. If you're the person out front and you have the people drafting behind you, this is where, of course, the heads up needs to be in play, because you need to be seeing what's coming in front of you. You can't make sudden moves. You can't swerve around things. You need to see. So if you see that pothole, you see that drain grate up ahead, you are now making a subtle line change say to the left. People are then you're expecting the draft people behind you to follow your wheel, and then as you come up to that, you're going to point. You're going to put your finger down and point and yell out the hole of the drain. Right. But it's again that smoothness and predictability is what leads to a good pace line. Same thing with your speed. Not sudden, no sudden braking, no sudden accelerations. A predictable speed. Yep. So these are all skills that actually do take quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, starting first with people again, like you and I can pace line behind you very, very close. I can draft very closely to you. I remember one PMC I was riding with a teammate I didn't know that well, but I was just right behind him. Not as close as I would be to you, but clearly closer than he was used to having somebody ride with him. I think he was a triathlete, which is a lot of them are no drafting. You're not allowed to. So he kept looking back, and I was like, I think he feels like there's something illicit about what we're doing right here. Felt a little dirty. But it's such a good way to help each other to be more efficient, you can still go
so much faster with such less effort.
Yeah.
And when you're in the pace line and you're not out front, so you're one of just the people in the line, you also, again, you can't make those sudden left-right changes. You have somebody on your wheel, and you can't do those sudden braking. So you have to learn to use your body aerodynamically to slow yourself down. So again, as you were saying, because the efficiency is so much greater behind somebody, you're going to find that there can be a tendency to overdo it, and you're riding into their wheel now.
Right.
So, but you can't do those, you can't make those sudden little braking changes. You can,
subtlety,
but you have to learn how to do it without any jerkiness.
Yeah.
And then you use your body a lot. You put your torso up into the wind to slow yourself down gently without having to use the brakes.
Then there's the other thing you have to learn. So in a true pace line situation, you're going to have someone pulling. They'll pull for a short-ish time. Then they will fall off. And the trick is that they have to grab the end.
Yes.
And I have definitely been dropped. Because if you don't grab the end, they're gone.
They're gone.
Like it's you're definitely working harder when you're riding by yourself, you're just naturally working. You're just not gonna be as efficient. That's why if you watch like a road race, you'll be like, oh, here comes the peloton, right? Here comes the group, because they're just a big swarm of speed.
Yep.
But also, it's important that you take your turn. I do remember one. Apparently, this show will be called Kristin's Memories of the PMC. I was going up Route 6 into Provincetown. Is notorious for a headwind, and we had one year. It was a very, very bad headwind, and I had done a very dumb thing, which I had dropped the rest of my team. So now I am by myself. I think I'm by myself on Route 6 going into the headwind until we pass the Provincetown sign, and I hear, "Thanks, Kristin." There were two people who had drafted with me the whole time. And then I was like, we're not done. And she was like, I can't do anymore. And he was like, okay. So they pulled off. I was like, son of a...
That happens.
That is just rude.
Yeah, that happens in windy conditions because the wind noise in your ears is so
I can't
high.
Hear them.
You cannot hear the tire noise of the people behind you.
And no one's posting, so you're not getting the...
Yep.
You're on a hill.
That absolutely can happen.
Yes, that was rude.
Hey, on the Friday morning fast road rides that I used to do, there would always be a group of people who I sort of knew everybody.
Yes.
And we would really get into a sharp pace line on those rides. And then I remember towards the tail end of that, and this was right before the pandemic, there were a lot of new people. And they were skilled,
right?
But you could sense the difference in the group and the pace line that they were not... they were just there was not all of a sudden that trust was gone, and it was super subtle, and you're trying to figure out what it was, but it was just slight. They weren't quite as consistent, they weren't quite as straight.
Yep.
They definitely had lacked the years of being in that particular pace line on that particular course.
Yep.
Right.
It takes practice, and I think that's an important thing with group rides, especially when you have a ride, say like the PMC, which is 2 days, 200 miles. People are training a lot over the summer, but they're not necessarily practicing with groups. And it's really important that you practice starting with you see what a group start feels like, right? Because you do end up with 5, 6 abreast, and you're going really slowly, and you may have the temptation to try to cross that yellow line to get some forward progress, but you really shouldn't be doing that because it's not closed roads. And I think that's where you can see a lot of people kind of falling on each other because they've been doing the work. They've been riding the miles, but they haven't ridden in a big group.
Yeah, they haven't done the groups.
Again, these are skills we don't think of so much when we think about riding. So, but it's a good one. That one's a really good one to have.
All right. Well, we're certainly open to hear all those underrated, little known bike skills that people don't think about. So.
Right. Underrated, but super important. All right. What do we have next?
Seen them all scrolling.
Yes, there is there is controversy brewing
with all the UCI rules. So the UCI decided to...
Who is the UCI? Can we just... Who are they? Why do they get
Union Ciclisme International, something of that nature. Okay. So they are the organizing body of, let's just say, all cycling for the purposes of this.
International.
They set down the rules. They have regulations on what you can ride, how you can ride, what you can wear. They're the ones who set up, testing protocols and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So the big one of the many rules that they came down with this past week is about handlebars.
Yes.
And this is the one that really drew up a lot of controversy.
This is the one everyone is quite irritated
So
about
road handlebars have gotten super, super, super narrow. And the reason is because the narrower you get, the more closed your shoulders get, the more tighter your arms are, and the more aerodynamic you are.
It's kind of the opposite of mountain biking, where they're getting wider, or they've gotten wider since we were kids.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's for control.
Yes.
So this was all about aerodynamics. So the UCI was like, these bikes are starting to look a little ridiculous, and they're being different, and a lot of their rules have to do with bikes looking and being like bikes.
Okay.
They want.
I was going to say
They
really,
want a correlation between the bikes that people buy and the companies buy, and that and that riders ride.
Yes,
they don't want
I have
to
questions
get
about
too. They don't want to have too big of a divergence there. They don't want it to be like Formula One. Nobody's going to be driving anything remotely related to a Formula One car.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, that makes sense.
So this is what, and they came out with a rule that's about, I think, what this was 400.
It says
it's 400 millimeters at the drops.
It says the new rule states handlebars cannot be narrower than 400 millimeters measured outside to outside at the drops, with an additional minimum measurement of 320 minimum between the inside of the brake hoods.
Right. Now, bars, when you see the width of a road handlebar, drop handlebar, it is measured from basically the bend. So the inside of the bend of the bar where the hoods go. That's where, so if a bar, you're buying a 400 millimeter bar or 420 millimeter bar, that's where they measure it, not at the bottoms of the drops.
Okay.
320 is extremely narrow already. So, but then there's, I think, some ambiguity here, and I've seen many other YouTube channels talk about this, because they're going to come out and they're going to measure this in the pits at the beginning of races. Is that actually measured at your hoods, the rubber to rubber of your hoods? And the bar tape and all that stuff? Because that's not where the bars are measured from when you buy them.
Right. They actually did put some clarification out there with illustrations.
They did.
Yeah. But I guess the issue is, according to Reddit, I did do a lot of reading, and it tends to be the ones they're really worried about are the women.
The women. Mm-hmm.
Right? That in many cases, women are best suited to 360 millimeters, which typically measure around 380 from edge to edge.
Okay.
So the concern is that women have narrower frames, and so narrower handlebars, they are now going to be at a disadvantage. And I guess it kind of feels like UCI might have a tradition of forgetting that women ride bikes and race them. Mm-hmm. So I think people are a little irritated about that. What I don't understand is, you and I talked about it offline, like, make it a percentage, right?
Yes.
If you measure this much, then your handlebars
to do with is they want to be able to basically have a stick that they can take into the pits and just stick it in between the bars, and it's a go or no go. They don't now. If you make it like that, it's too complicated. They can't. But you could with each rider. Each rider has a biological passport.
Okay.
For their testing protocols.
Oh.
You could basically put their measurement into their biological passport, so to speak, so that each rider would then have a set minimum between the hoods.
One of the things I was going to ask is how much do these rules impact, say, what consumers can buy or will buy in the future? Is that and you were saying they do think about that they think about
huge. That's a major consideration of theirs.
Did they also address, one of the things we talked about was tubeless setups?
Mm-hmm.
Did they address that in these rules, or tubeless road tires
I
still?
did not.
I don't think they did.
The handlebar thing has been such a
handlebars,
talking
the helmets
point that I haven't seen that.
Okay, it was handlebars, helmets. And
I am all for the helmet rule.
Okay.
So they are banning basically these time trial helmets in road races.
Oh,
they looked goofy. And I don't care if that's the only reason why, because they look goofy. That is fine with me. They look goofy. We do not need to encourage your weekend warrior guy to be wearing a time trial helmet, because that's what the pros are doing.
I will say, and they do. Sometimes you're out for a ride and you'll see somebody out on a ride in a time trial helmet, and you're like, what are you doing? You look.
They're also hotter. They don't have as good of airflow. Typically.
Does that?
They're heavier as well.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, it will be interesting to watch.
That one doesn't bother me.
The women are.
It's going to bother some people.
Yeah. No. But but the women are not happy, according to Lee Prescott, president of the International Bike Feeding Institute.
Yep. I don't think that we've heard the last of the handlebar sizing situation. I think this is going to be an evolving change.
Yeah, well, he said, the IBFI understands and supports the intention behind the ruling to discourage the unsafe use of excessively narrow handlebars. And that's the reason they're doing it. We believe the current implementation lacks adequate consideration of human biomechanics and rider safety. So, yeah, there's a petition that you can actually sign that a lot of professional riders have signed.
Okay.
So let's get out there, sign that. Well, there we go.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
Yeah, wrap it up. Episode 20 in the can. Good job, honey. Cycling Together with Kristin and Steve is a production of Steve the Bike Guy, an independent bicycle shop in Eastern Massachusetts, and Sundin Marketing.
If you like the show, please leave a review or share with a friend. And for show notes, links, or to leave a comment, question, or topic suggestion, visit cyclingtogether.bike. And you can follow the shop, Steve the Bike Guy, on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Steve the Bike Guy.
And please leave a comment. I
leave
have
a comment.
to say, Thursday was really fun just for the number of people who said they listened to the show. One of them, I do have to share this. He said, "Can I say the show is adorable? You guys are adorable." And I was like, I think so too. Anyway, thanks for joining the ride.
Thanks for listening. Yes, we'll see you next time.
So I would say that's one skill. Thoughts?